Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is Shabbos, Daf Kuf Zayin. We'll go over the Mishnah again. We'll start again from Kuf Vav and Beis, the bottom. The last Mishnah on Kuf Vav and Beis. We'll start from there.
Yashav ha'echad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Yashav ha'echad al Pesach. If one person sat down at the doorway, V'lai melahu, and he did not fully block the doorway. Yashav Hasheni Umalahu. And then a second person sits down next to him, and together they are now blocking the whole doorway, which there's a deer that ran into the house. Okay? So it comes out now, when the second person sat down, the deer is fully trapped in this house. Hasheni Chayiv, the second one is Chayiv for trapping, because, Alan, can you just mute yourself, please, when you're not speaking? Because.
Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I forgot I was sipping coffee. Here we go.
Yeah. So when the first one sat down, being that he did not fully trap the deer. So when the first one sat down, the deer was not trapped. The second one effectively trapped the deer. So the second one would be liable. Let's say now the first person sat down, he's taking up the whole doorway. So he has effectively trapped the deer. And then person number two comes, sits next to number one. So now the first person is definitely liable because he trapped that deer. Now the second person sat down, and then the first person stands up. So it comes out what is holding this deer in there? The second person. So is he required to get up now in order that he's not considered trapping this deer? So even though the first person got up and moved on, the first one is liable, the second one is not liable. What is this kind of boom? Somebody locks his house to safeguard it, and a deer is found to be guarded in, which means the deer was already trapped in the day before, and it turns out it was guarded in the house. So again, for example, a deer was already bound in the house, and then somebody locks the door. Since anyways the deer was trapped, the person who locked it didn't do anything. So deer, the second person, he didn't do nothing. When he sat down, it was already trapped. You're not required to get up. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's begin the Gemara now. Now, want to make mention of Steve's question on Friday, whether there is any, if an animal's trapped already, if there's any prohibition of untrapping it. Meaning by many malachas, we find the undoing of the malacha is also malacha. Like you make a knot, you undo the knot. So the question was, is untrapping an animal, is anything wrong with that on Shabbos? And again, I said the relevance would be if you know that there's an animal locked up in your garbage can, and you open the garbage can and that lets it out. So not talking about misasik where you don't know what you're doing, but let's say you purposely want to let it out. That was Steve's question. I believe as we go through the Gemara today, we'll have an inference. So I'm going to just put that out there, and whoever catches it, please let me know if you agree that I think we have a good proof whether there's a prohibition in untrapping. Okay, so let's see who can catch that. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Chia. We're now in 107A1, Kuf Zayin Amar Aleph. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi, Amar Rav. Rav Abba said in the name of Rav Chia bar Ashi and name of Rav, Nichnesa like tzipor tachas knafav. If a bird enters under the flap of somebody's garments and cannot get out, are you supposed to let it out, or are you supposed to keep it in there throughout Shabbos? Yoshev Meshamar Eshetachshach, he should sit and guard it until it gets dark, which means just leave it there. Rashi says he is not required to let it out. Rashi says you don't have to make an opening to let it out because you didn't do nothing. So you're allowed to just maintain it in your garment. Okay, that is Rav's novelty. Master of Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Yitzchak challenges from our Mishnah. Yashav Harishan al Pasach Umalahu. So we had, if the first person sat down by the doorway where this deer had entered the house and he filled up the doorway. And then person number comes and sits down. Even though the first person got up and moved on. The first person is liable, and the second person is exempt. Now, exempt, remember, by the rules of Shabbos, usually pater means pater lava aser, which means biblically exempt, but it's still forbidden. My pater lava aser sounds like the second person, when he is staying in position over there, he is not liable, but it sounds from the Mishnah like he's still doing some at least rabbinic prohibition of keeping this deer trapped. So which would imply you should let it out. So Ma'ala Pater Alva. So seemingly it's exempt, but it's still forbidden. Merzelo, no, Pater Mutter, no, he's exempt and is actually completely permitted for him to stay there. Hachinami Mustafa. It's actually reasonable like this. Midikani Seifam, because the end of Mishnah teaches, Lamazadam, what is this comparable? Lenil is basically Shomer, somebody locks his house to safeguard it. Vinimtza Tzvi Shomer B'Seifai, and he finds a deer guarded within. He didn't do anything wrong. The deer was trapped already, and that they say was clear that you didn't do anything wrong. From the fact that we're comparing person number 2 after person number 1 already trapped it to this case of person closing a door on a house where there was already the deer was trapped. So that implies that it's exempt and it's actually totally permitted. Okay. So it comes out that if someone gets trapped in your garment, you're not required to let it out. Similar to the case of, because once it's trapped already, you don't have to let it out. Similar to the case of if person number 1 traps it and then you sit down next to him and he gets up, you're not required to get up. Ikadamri, another version of this conversation. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak said, Afananam Tinino. He said, instead of challenging the ruling that you're allowed to leave the bird in your garment, he says, I can support the ruling from our Mishnah. Even though person number 1 stood up and left, first one is liable, second one is exempt. Ma'ala pater mutter, seemingly, second one is exempt, and he's not doing anything wrong. It's permitted. So it sounds like if you are not the trapper, but you're just staying in position, there's nothing wrong with that. Gemara says, no, patel avral aser. Maybe it means from the Mishnah, he's exempt, but it's still forbidden. So there's no proof that it's totally permitted. But from the fact that the end of the Mishnah says, to what is this comparable? The noilus basel shomer, someone locks his house to safeguard. And it turns out there was a deer locked up in it. Which is, those, clearly we don't view that as a prohibition. When you lock your house, you're not required to check if there's animals inside. There's no prohibition there. So this implies you're exempt and is actually totally permitted. Okay, so who has a proof to Steve's question from what we just did?
I think according to Rav, you shouldn't be able to do it. He's pretty explicit because he says, Yoshev and Mishamro, you sit with it.
Okay.
And like you shouldn't do it.
Okay.
But according to Rav Nachman, I don't see it one way or the other.
Okay. So I threw in Rashi's explanation on Rav by Yoshev and Mishamro. It's Rashi's second Rashi from the top. Yoshev Mishamro. So again, if the person finds that a bird flew into his cloak or into his shirt, he sits and guards it. Cain. He guards like this. Dr. Rashi. Ve'enod sarach lefterach lechalon. And he is not required to open a window in his shirt. The Eino Lashemer, because he's just a guard. What do you see from that, Steve? Pretty clear from Rashi. You're not required to let it out. What does that imply, though?
You could.
Absolutely. No? I think you have a clear proof. When I first saw the Gemara Yoshev Mishamro, you could understand Rav is saying you're required to guard it there and not let it out. As Steve wanted to say, right? But Rashi is clear as day, I believe, that he's not saying like that. Rather, he's saying you're allowed to keep it there and you're not required to let it out. It seems pretty clear from Rashi that if you wanted to, you could. I would say more than that. Person number 2, according to Steve, if there would be a prohibition of untrapping, that means that person number 1 sat down and blocked the doorway. And then number 2 sits down. And then number 1 gets up, right? Our question is, did number 2, is he required to get up or is he allowed to stay there, right? The Gemara is going back and forth. Whether there's a rabbinic prohibition for him to stay there. Sounds pretty clear. If he wants to get up, he could. It seems pretty clear. Again, I don't know the bottom line ruling, but it seems pretty clear throughout this Gemara that it's not a question that definitely sounds like you're allowed to get up. It's just a question whether you're required to get up. No? Would you agree to that, Steve?
I could.
According to, if not, person number 2 would not be allowed to get up, according to you. Our Gemara doesn't say that at all. No? Again, I'm not giving a bottom line ruling here. And I do remember what Burke was saying, like that we showed him talk about this. So I don't know if it's cut and dry, but it seems pretty clear. There's a lot of inference from this Gemara that it would be okay. That's what I'm seeing from this Gemara. Okay. Amar Shmuel. So now we have very interesting halacha. Almost always when we have the rule putter by the rules of Shabbos, it means you're exempt, but it's still rabbinically forbidden. But we said this case, person number 2, not only is he exempt, but he's not required. He's allowed to maintain his position and stay in position even after person number 1 gets up, even though he is effectively keeping the deer trapped. We said from the Gemara, it's okay. You are not required to get up. Okay. Amar Shmuel said, "Kol patur de Shabbos." Whenever you have the word putter, exempt by the rules of Shabbos, putter al asur. The general rule of thumb is it means exempt, but it's still rabbinically forbidden. Levar mehanik tzlach to pater mutter, except for 3 cases by the laws of Shabbos that you're exempt and it's actually permitted. Chadaham. One is this case of the person in the doorway with the deer. That we said if one person sits down, he blocks the doorway. Then person number 2 sits down. He didn't add anything. Then person number 1 gets up. Person number 2 is allowed to stay there. Okay. How do I know that it means you're exempt and it's actually totally permitted? The Tani Seifa, as it says at the end, Lamazah Daimon, towards is comparable, Lanel Space Losham. It's someone who locks his house to guard it, and it turns out there's a deer inside of it. There's no liability there whatsoever, no prohibition. You are not required, when you lock your door of your house, you don't have to do searching through your house to make sure that there's no animals hiding there. I actually have a very good case. I have a bird decided to make a nest in our shed. I'll leave this all to you, rabbis. Am I allowed to? I have a bird nest in my shed right now. Okay, the bird came in. I don't know about shiluch hakein because I can't figure out if it's a kosher bird or not. I need to figure that out. Am I allowed to close my shed on Shabbos? Is that called trapping it? So I'll leave that to all you to let me know if I'm allowed to close it. Am I required to? Well, let's just say I didn't know that it was in there. Am I required to check every time I close my shed if there's a bird inside my shed? So the Gemara clearly, when you lock your house, you don't have to go searching through your house to make sure there's no animals that slipped in to make sure you're not doing trapping. Okay? So that's the first case where it's permitted. What's the second case where we have the word pater means permitted? V'idach, another case, hamafis mursa b'Shabbos. Famous case. Somebody who lances a boil on Shabbos. So somebody has like a pimple or like a boil growing on their skin and they lance it with a needle. So is there something wrong with that? So like this, it depends what his goal is over here. If your goal is to make an opening for this boil, so which would mean in order that additional pus will drain from it and to allow air in so the boil will heal. And Rashi says that was actually standard procedure with the doctors in his days. They would purposely make openings in the boil and that's how they would heal them. So chayiv, if that's your goal, you're liable because you're either doing building by building that hole or you're doing makbid patish, the final hammer blow, and trying to heal this because you're repairing a wound. So if your goal is that you want an opening, that is a biblical malacha. If your whole goal is just to drain the pus, so it's not that I want an opening. I just want the pus to be able to have an exit to go out. And I don't care, Rashi says, if the hole closes immediately afterwards. So it's not that I want a hole. I just need to get the pus out. The pater, he's exempt. Because you didn't actually build a hole, and you're not. Gary, can you if you can mute yourself, please? We have that static again. So again, in L'Haitzim and Lechem, if your goal is to remove the pus from it, pater is exempt. This is our second case where the word exempt means it's actually permitted to do. How do you know that it's exempt and permitted? It's none that, as we learned in a Mishnah, coming up Daf Kufcha Beis Mertashem, Machat Shal Yad, a hand needle is allowed to be handled on Shabbos, Likal Ba'asakaites, to take out a thorn with it. So this is another example where there's no concern so when you take out a thorn, also you're making a hole in your skin to get out the thorn. But since your goal is just to get out the thorn, not to make an opening, and you don't care if the opening closes immediately, there's no concerns. Now, you might say there should be at least a rabbinic thing, but because these involve pain, therefore the rabbis did not make their enactments over here. So just like you're allowed to take out a thorn, you're allowed to lance this boil. Again, if it comes up, I would say talk to rabbi, because you see that you got to be very careful about it, because if you do it wrong, it's a biblical prohibition. And also, it's only permitted because, so it's kind of like a combination. It's because of pain, and it's because you're not trying to make an opening. So I would just say to actually consult with a rabbi if it comes up in practice, because it's not so simple There are cases biblically liable, a case that is totally permitted. But we do see, again, this putter is that it's totally permitted when there's nothing biblical because you don't want the hole. You just want for the pus to drain. And there's a pain here, so rabbis allow it. The idach, what's the third case where we have the word putter, which means totally permitted? Hatzad nachash b'Shabbos, somebody who traps a snake on Shabbos. It's like this. If he's involved with it, so it will not bite him, putter, he's exempt. If you're trapping the snake in order to use it for a cure, so you want the snake in order to develop a cure with it, chayiv, then you're liable, because there you want the trapped snake. But if your goal is just you're trapping it so it won't bite you, that is exempt. And that's our third case where it means it's actually permitted. How do you know it's exempt and it's permitted? It's non, as we learned in another Mishnah, coming on Daf 121, you're allowed to invert a bowl over a lamp in order that it not set fire to an overhead beam, or a species of a child, or of a scorpion, that it so it does not sting you, even though Rashi says a scorpion gets trapped when you stick something over it. But we see that you're allowed to do it in order that it doesn't sting you. Again, I'm not giving bottom line rulings here because it might depend on the species that are usually trapped or not. But again, the point is we have three cases where even though it says putter, you're exempt, it means it's totally permitted. One is the case of, again, if somebody sits down blocking the opening of a house, you sit down next to them, that person gets up, you're not required to get up. The second case was by lancing a boil, and the third case was to trap a snake just in order that it will not bite you. Mazel tov, hadron alav ha'ireg. Okay, new Mishnah, new parak. We're now on 107A3, Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, the new parak. All right. Let's continue onward with trapping and bruising animals. Okay? Shemaina shiratzim ha'amur b'Torah. We know there are 8 shiratzim that are mentioned in the Torah that their bodies convey tumah after they die. So usually a larger animal that's a nevela that dies without being shechted, it conveys tumah. But small animals do not convey tumah. But there are 8 animals mentioned in Torah that their bodies convey tumah, and we're going to see now how it applies to trapping and bruising them. Let's go through note 1 over here. And again, if you don't have our article, don't worry, I'll go through it. Just a little introduction. What are these ambiguous 8 creatures whose bodies convey tumah? So note 1 here. A sheretz is a low-lying animal that slithers along the ground or appears to slither on the ground. Either it has no legs, like a snake, or it has short legs whose movement is not readily noticeable, like a beetle. In the latter case, although the animal walks, the shortness of its legs makes it appear to slither or glide. The category of shiratzim does not have an exact English equivalent. It includes some, but not necessarily all, reptiles, rodents, amphibians, mollusks, and insects, as well as other classes. Unlike taller animals, most shiratzim do not convey tumah when they die. The Torah, however, lists 8 species of shiratzim whose carcasses do convey tumah. As the pasuk says, these are for you the contaminated ones among the creeping animals that creep on the earth, the choled, the achbor, the tzav, according to its variety, the anaka, the koach, the latah, the chomet, and the tinshemes. Okay? So there's 8 creatures that their dead bodies convey tumah. Since not all of these creatures' identities are clear, their names are transliterated. The following are some of the suggested translations. So again, we don't know for sure. We don't have total clarity on this. The choled, Rashi translates this as the mushtolam, which is Old French for a weasel. Other authorities identify it as a mole. Achbar, it is generally agreed that this is a mouse. And this is actually, if you go to Israel, the word achbar is translated as a mouse. And it may include other rodents as well, such as a rat. So if you have a dead mouse or rat, it would convey tumah according to this. The body would. Sav.
Would that include squirrels?
Can't answer that question. We don't have 100% clarity on this, so it's possible. Sav, this is a fright or butterel. These words mean toad in Old French. The tzav has alternatively been identified as a ferret or various species of lizard. Anaka, Rashi renders this as hurricane, which is modern French for hedgehog or porcupine. According to the Radak, it is a beaver. Koach, this certain species of lizard. Septuagint identifies it as chameleon. Lita, Rashi translates it as a lizard, which means lizard in Old French. Chomet, this is the limus, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing them right, by the way, which denotes a snail or slug in Old French. Rashi the Chagiga describes it as growing inside a shell, which indicates it is a snail. According to Radak, it is a chameleon. In Shemes, Rashi translates this as a tulpi, which is Old French for mole. Or Sad identifies it as a type of lizard. Okay? So again, we don't have clarity, but if you want to research, there's lots of works written on this.
Where are you at to?
Going back to this mission, we're going to start the mission again.
Okay.
So Shmoina Shiratzim Ha'amur B'Torah. The 8 Shiratzim that are mentioned in the Torah, that again, so large animals convey tumah. General small animals, these that slither or have very small legs, they don't convey tumah when they die, except for these 8 cases that their bodies do convey tumah. So now we'll see it has relevance as well for the halachas of trapping and bruising. Hatzadan v'hachovel ben chayiv. Somebody who traps these 8 shiratzim is biblically liable for trapping, and if somebody bruises them on Shabbos is liable for bruising. Now, the bruising is a big discussion. What malacha is bruising? Because it's not one of the primary categories. So bruising means that you give it a bruise and it causes like the blood to swell up within it. So Rashi says there's 2 possibilities. Either it falls under shochet, which is shachting, which means taking the life, which means that when you cause the blood to swell like that, it's a form of killing it. Or the other option is that since the animal's skin gets discolored through the bruising, that is dying, the other type of dying, which is soveya, which is dying. So now it'd have to be that you want the skin to get dyed, otherwise, in order to make it a constructive melacha. And then there's other opinions as well. So, if you want to keep it simple, bruising is either dying or dying, which means it's either killing it, which means you kill it partially by causing the blood to leave its place, or it's the halach, or it's dying it, causing the skin to get discolored. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So these 8 shiratzim, if you trap them or you bruise them, you'll be liable. Ushar shekatzim uramasim, but other vermin and crawling things. So, for example, worms, snakes, and scorpions, those that are not included in the 8 shiratzim, ha'choyvel ben pater, somebody who bruises them would be exempt. And the reason is, Rashi says, they don't have hides, which are enveloped by a thin, soft skin or membrane, as opposed to a thick hide. So the 8 shiratzim have a thick hide. These don't have a thick hide. Now, since the other ones, their skins are soft, they rend easily, and then their blood returns to its original state. So it's similar to if kind of like if you slap your hand, right? You cause there's redness to the skin, and then it leaves. That's not dying it, and that's not killing it. That's just momentarily causing redness. That would not be a malacha. So therefore, that's not like killing it, and it's not even called dying it, because that's reversible. Okay? As opposed to the 8 shiratzim have thick skins or hides, and therefore when if you bruise it and the skin reddens, that means the capillaries have ruptured, which allows the blood to collect under the skin. That's considered irreversible, which is either a form of killing or a form of dying. Okay? Now, so other than the 8 shiratzim, if you're exempt. Hatzadan, let's say somebody traps them, so it depends. If you trap them for a positive, constructive purpose, like you want this trapped animal, you'd be liable. But if you trap it not for a constructive purpose, then you would be exempt. So this is a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, which means you do a malacha, but not for its defined purpose. So I'm trapping it, not because I want the trapped animal, but let's just say I just want it out of my face. I don't want it bothering me. That's a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, which according to Yehuda would be liable, or Shimon would say you're exempt. It's rabbinically forbidden, but it's biblically exempt. And therefore, our mission goes according to Shimon. Therefore, if you trap these not for their own purpose, pater, you're biblically exempt. The commentaries discuss why this distinction is only made by the non-8 shratzim. Seemingly for the 8 shratzim as well, you should only be liable if you did it for constructive purposes. So some say that the 8 shratzim are not usually harmful. Generally, they're trapped for medicinal purposes, like you want to make powders from them. Therefore, generally, we assume that you're trapping it for a constructive purpose. As opposed to others, there is no general assumption. It could be you just want to get it out of your hair, and therefore it would have to be specifically for a constructive purpose. Okay?
Rabbi.
Yes.
If you trap it because you don't want it to sting you, just like earlier.
If you trap it because you don't want it to sting you, that would be a malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufam, a malacha not for its defined purpose, which according to Shimon would anyways knock it down from biblical to rabbinic, and there are certain cases where the rabbis may allow it to avoid pain. But I'm not saying that as a blanket rule. It may depend. We'll have to get to our bottom line ruling, because first of all, you have to keep in mind, we did see that it makes a difference. Those things are a species that are usually trapped or not a species that are usually trapped.
Yeah.
Species that are usually trapped, like people trap it for professional purposes, let's say bees or something, that usually, then you're dealing with biblical issues. It's not usually trapped. That could downgrade it to rabbinic. But malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa, if you don't need it for its defined purpose, you just want it so it won't sting you, that definitely knocks it down to rabbinic. The question is, when did the rabbis allow it and when not? Okay? So chayav ha'oif she'b'rshus sayiv, beasts and birds that are under your control, they're already in your possession, which means you can access it with very small movement. Hatzad and patur, somebody traps them as exempt because they are already trapped. Or if you bruise them, you still would be liable because these do have hides, and therefore the bruising would be called either killing it on a small level, or it would be called dying it. Okay? So let's analyze this mission. There's a lot to talk about regarding this mission. So let's see the Gemara now. For the fact that the Mishnah says, somebody who bruises these 8 shratzim, you're liable. And now how do we say, what distinguishes between the 8 shratzim and the others? We say, because they have a hide. B'chlal de'islahu or, it follows that all the 8 shratzim have hides. Man tana. Because again, that was the difference. So basically the 8 shratzim have like a real thick hide and the other ones don't. Montana, who is the Tana that holds that all 8 shratzim have a hide, and therefore if you bruise them, you would be liable? All right, so this is going to be the big discussion now. These 8 creatures, do they have hides? Meaning that hide that they have, is that considered a separate thick hide, or is that just more considered like a more thin hide? Montana, so who holds that all 8 shratzim have like a separate thick hide? Amr Shmuel said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, that's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, the Tanan, as we learned in Mishnah in Chulin, and Daf Kuf Chabez. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Shmona shratzim yesh lan oiros, the 8 shratzim have hides. Now, this has to do with, the basic concept is by the halachas of Tumah, which is if an animal dies a natural death or killed in any manner other than being shechted, we know it's a nevela, and the flesh of a nevela conveys Tumah. But the horns, hooves, bones, and other parts of the body do not convey tumah. So, does the skin of a tummy creature, dead tummy creature, convey tumah? It depends. If it's like a hide, it's like a skin is considered part like the flesh. But a hide, it depends. If it's soft, it's like the flesh, and then it would convey tumah. If it's hard, a real hide, then it's considered a distinct entity. And it's like the horns, and it does not convey tumah. So, when it comes to the 8 creatures, if you want to know if their hides convey tumah, so you have to ask your question: is the hide a distinct entity? Is it a hard and a distinct entity, or not? So the Mishnah in Chulin has 3 opinions regarding the hides of these 8 creatures, what the status of the hide is. So the rabbis hold that the skins of 4 of the 8 shratzim convey tumah. And this is the anaka, the koach, the latah, and the nechomet. Don't worry if you don't remember that. So the Rabbanan and the Mishnah Chulin hold only 4 of the 8 creatures have hides that are considered that they convey tumah, that they're more softer. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda says only the skins of the anaka, koach, and chomet convey tumah. So only 3 of them are considered that they convey tumah. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that none of the 8 shratzim have skins that convey tumah. So it seems like our Mishnah, again, so our Mishnah is saying that if you bruise them, you're liable. That means they have a thick hide. That would be like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says their hides don't convey tumah, because that's the same qualification, that it must be thick, so therefore it doesn't have the status of skin, and therefore it doesn't convey tumah. So it sounds like our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri again. The Tanaz, we learned the Mishnah Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan says Shmona shratzim yeshan aris. The 8 shratzim have hides, which means their hides are not soft like their skin, but it's a separate entity called a hide. That's why it does not commit tumah, and that would be the reason why if you bruise the animal, you would be liable. Rabbi Bar Huna Amar Rav. Rabbi Bar Huna said name Rav. Afilu Terambani says no. You can even say that it works out according to Rabban. Now the Rabbanan said in the Mishnah in Chulin that only 4 of the 8 convey tumah, which means 4 have soft skins and 4 have hides. However, you can work out our Mishnah even like the Rabbanan. Why? How far did the Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Yochanan? Tumah, only regarding the rules of tumah. Because it says these are the tummy ones to you. Which includes that there are some of these creatures that their hides are like their flesh, and it's not considered a hide, but rather considered like a flesh and conveys tumah. In Shabbos, if the Rabbanan might do, but maybe regarding the rules of Shabbos, where there's no special inclusionary law, maybe the Rabbanan will agree that it has the status of a hide, and you would be liable for bruising them. Okay? So it comes out, Rav wants to say that the whole machlokas in the Mishnah in Chulin, where Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that they all 8 have hides, and therefore the hides do not convey tumah. And the Rabbanan say 4 have hides, they don't convey tumah, and 4, it's more like skin, and they do convey tumah. Rav said that's only a tumah machlokas. But regarding Shabbos, it could be everybody agrees that it's qualified as a hide, and therefore bruising them would be liable. Fraktimar, really? We're now in 107.85, right at the bottom of Kuv Zayin and Aleph. Really? Ulin Shabbos likely they don't argue regarding the rules of Shabbos. V'hatani will enter a brayso hatzad achar mishmana shratzim hamur b'Torah. If somebody traps one of the 8 creatures, shratzim that are mentioned in the Torah, so hachayvel b'hen, or if he bruises one of them, chayiv, you would be liable for either trapping or bruising it. Div Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. These are the words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, which makes a lot of sense. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri clearly says they have a hide, therefore definitely liable for bruising them. The Chachamim and the sages say, no, ein or ella, there are no shratzim that have hides, except for l'mash shemanu chachamim, only those enumerated by the rabbis in the Mishnah Chulin. Okay, so they say, no, only the ones listed in the Mishnah Chulin. Only 4 of them have hides, but 4 of them don't have hides. Okay, so now, before we get to the question, we really have to analyze this brisa, which seems to be backwards. We're now in 107b1, Kuf Zayin Amun Aleph. So, Adarabah, to the contrary, L'maz Shemanu Chacham Ein Lahem Or. Those shratzim enumerated by the rabbis do not have hides, which means the Mishnah Chulin was listing the ones that convey tumah. And again, the rabbi said the anaka, the karach, the latah, and the chomet convey tumah. Now, if they convey tumah, does that mean it's called a hide or it's not called a hide? That means it's not called a hide, because if it is called a hide, then it's a separate entity, and if it's a separate entity, it would not convey tumah. So those 4 listed in the Mishnah Chulin, that the rabbis say the skins convey tumah, those are specifically the ones that don't have hides. Yet this brisa says, the rabbi said, no, the only ones that have hides are those 4 we mentioned in Chulin. That's not true. Those 4 in Chulin are the ones that don't have hides. So Adarabah, to the contrary, L'mash shemanucham ein lamar. Are you telling me it's the opposite? The ones mentioned in Chulin are the ones that don't have a hide. V'amar Abai, and Abai is said to explain this. Hachi Kamar, this is what the brisa means. Ein or chalak mi basar ela l'mash le'manu chachamim. There are no shratzim that have hides that are distinct from their flesh, except for those not enumerated by the rabbis in Mishnah Chulin, which means the ones mentioned in Chulin don't have a hide, and therefore their skin conveys tumah. And the ones that do have a hide that's distinct are the ones that are not mentioned there. But we've got problems, because Rav wanted to say that it could be everybody would agree by the rules of Shabbos. But here you see clearly from this price so that the same machlokas you have by the rules of Tumah would apply to the rules of Shabbos as well. which means our Mishnah says that 8 shratzim are liable for bruising would only be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, not their sages. So Amalei Rava. So Rava said back to him, to Abaye, who had given the previous solution, Halamash shemanucham ka'amar. But how are you fitting that into the brisa? Still something wrong with the wording of the brisa. Halamash shemanucham ka'amar. The brisa says those enumerated by the rabbis. So how can you, Abaye, say no? The ones that have hides are those not enumerated in the Mishnah Chulin. The brisa says the ones that have hides are the ones that are yes enumerated in the Mishnah Chulin. You can't just flip around the brisa, say it's a backwards reading. Ella Amarava, rather Rava said, Halchi Kamar, this is what the brisa means. Ein or metame kibasar ela limma shemanacham. This halacha that the hide conveys tuma like the flesh only applies to those shratzim enumerated by the rabbis in the Chulin, which means that this halacha specifically is a tuma halacha. That halacha of tuma applies only to ones that were enumerated over there. So the Gemara says, Mechlal de Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, which would imply that according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Hanach nami deloin manucham etamin. Does that mean even the hides of those shratzim not enumerated by the rabbis convey tuma? But Haktani, but the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri amar shmai shratzim yeshan aris v'loim etamin. But it's the opposite. The Mishnah says that according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, the 8 creatures have skins and they don't convey tuma. Because again, if you hold that it's a separate hide, therefore it's not like the flesh, it conveys tumah. But you're reading the brisa implied that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri would say that they don't convey tumah. Amar v'adar bar mas or adar mas said Turitz hachi. This is how you have to explain the brisa. The sages say regarding tumah ein ar l'mash manachachamim. These shiratzim enumerated the rabbis and chulin do not have hides, but it's only a tumah halacham. However, it could be again regarding Shabbos. Rav could be correct that everybody agrees that regarding Shabbos, they have the status of hides. So it could be both the rabbis and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri agree that regarding Shabbos, the 8 shratzim have a distinct hide, and therefore you would be liable for bruising them. Regarding Tumah, there's machlokas, what the status of this hide is. Okay, Frakti Gemara. Va'akati l'inin Shabbos loy pligi. Are you telling me that regarding the laws of Shabbos, again, there's no machlokas, and everybody agrees that the 8 shratzim have a thick hide, and therefore you would be liable for bruising? But we learned in the brisa. The brisa says if somebody traps one of the 8 shiratzim mentioned in the Torah, or if he bruises one of them, you're liable. But only a sheret that has a hide. Okay? Now obviously there's nothing to do with halachas of trapping, but it has to do with the halachas of bruising. Now, but let's continue the brisa first. But you see already the brises make a distinction that you're only going to be liable for bruising those other shratzim that have a hide. And what is the minimum that is considered an irreversible wound? Because remember, you're only liable, whatever this malacha of bruising is, which is either killing, which means you're killing it partially, or dying, it's only going to be if it's an irreversible wound. So what's called an irreversible wound? Nitzur hadam al pi shel yatzeh, a wound that the blood collects under the skin, even if it does not emerge. So you have a bruise. So if you bruise an animal that has a hide, not just a thick skin, but a hide, the blood leaves the bloodstream and is not reabsorbed, and that's called an irreversible wound, even if it does not leave the body. Okay? Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Shemona shiratzim yeshan iris, all 8 of the shiratzim have hides, and therefore you would be liable for bruising any of them. Okay? So it sounds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is coming to argue on the sages. Again, remember, Rav wanted to say that when it comes to halachas of Shabbos and bruising, everybody agrees all 8 have hides, right? You see again clearly from this price regarding the halachas of bruising, it sounds still like it's a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. But the sages don't agree. They'll only say some have hides, not all. What are you saying, Kerry?
Excuse me. When you speak of bruising, on an animal, if I get a bruise, it's there, but it's not permanent, and it brings the blood up, and so. What is the difference between my bruise and a bruise with an animal that has a hide? This is saying it has to be permanent, to be liable. So if you hit an animal and it makes a mark on them for 3 or 4 days, you're not liable because it goes away?
Now, 1 second. We saw in the Mishnah a beast and a bird. You would be liable for bruising. I would assume, I'm not sure where a person fits into this conversation, but basically if you have a hard hide, then it means the capillaries have burst. I don't know, if you bruise yourself, does that mean the capillaries have burst? Or does it just mean the blood relocated?
Yes, I think so.
I'm not sure about that level.
Capillaries have burst.
What?
Capillaries have burst. If you have
Okay.
bruising under the skin and it causes that discoloration. Now, with certain animals that have fur and feathers, you're not going to see a bruise anyway.
Okay, well, I don't know if it makes a difference.
That's open for discussion.
Okay, so basically, birds and animals, bruising them is irreversible in some way. It means something is burst and it's not going to go back to the way it was before. Certain creatures that don't have a distinct hide, the fact that they got bruised is still reversible. It doesn't mean something real happened. It just means the blood has shifted and it will go back. So that's what we're looking for. That answer your question, Kerry?
Somewhat. I guess it's got to be permanent, for you to be liable.
Irreversible, which means even though it will eventually leave, but it won't go back to the way it was before, it will exit your bloodstream as opposed to just going back to the way it was before.
Okay.
So it'll exit the body somehow, but not necessarily it's still what happened was irreversible, as opposed to those that have a soft hide, it's reversible. Whatever took place is going to go right back to the way it was before. That's what we're looking for.
Okay. Thanks.
So we got problems again. Again, Rob wanted to say that this whole machlokas is regarding the laws of Tumah between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the sages in Chulin. But regarding the laws of bruising, it could be everybody, those sages would agree to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that all 8 shratzim have a separate, harder hide, and you would be liable. Problem is, a brisa implies that there's a machlokas even regarding the rules of bruising the 8 shratzim. So we're now on 107b2, a third of the way down on Kuf Zayin and Beis. Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said, we're literally the first of the widest lines right now. Man Tanakama. Who is the Tanakama of this brisa who says the laws of bruising only apply to some of these 8 shratzim? Rabbi Yehuda, that's specifically Rabbi Yehuda argues by the laws of Shabbos. The Azal Basar Gishta, because Rabbi Yehuda goes after the actual thickness of the sharetz's skin to determine whether it conveys tumah. Remember, the relevance of tumah is because if it's a thick skin, then it's not part of the body and the flesh, and therefore will not convey tumah. So by the rules of tumah, Rabbi Yehuda goes after the thickness. The Tanan, as we learned in Mishnah Chulin, Rabbi Yehuda says, Halata kachulda, the lata is like the choled, that the skin does not convey tumah. Again, these are 2 of the 8 shratzim. Avorabanan, the pliyale Rabbi Yochanan linin tumah, but the rabbis are arguing Rabbi Yochanan regarding the laws of tumah. Linin Shabbos moedele, they would agree. So again, so Rab said the rabbis could agree to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that all 8 of the shratzim are liable for bruising. The brisa indicates the machlokas. That's specifically Rabbi Yehuda's opinion would argue, because he has told you have to measure the thickness of the skin. But it could be the sages would agree to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So when the first brisa said these are the words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that all 8 shratzim have the halachas of bruising, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri machlukasim barlei should say these are the words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and even those who argue on him agree. Which means even the sages who argue on Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri by the laws of Tumah would agree. So why does it apply? These are the words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. It should say these are the words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and those who argue will agree by the case of bruising that you're liable. Tani, you're right. This is how you should read the brisa. Di Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri machlukasa. Yeah, these words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, even if the sages who argue would agree over here. Okay. So it comes out you need to have some level of permanent effect to be called bruising, right? Levi asks of Rabbi, how do you know it only qualifies as a wound that would make you liable if it is irreversible? Okay? Meaning, let's say you cause a reversible wound. At the end of the day, the skin gets red, so maybe you should be liable for that as well. Diksiv. So Rabbi said, as it's written in a pasuk in Yirmiyah, Hayahafoch kushi oiray v'namer chavar buroisav. Can a kushi change his skin? Rashi says a kushi is a dark-skinned person. Can a dark-skinned person change his skin color? And can a leopard change its chaburos? Chabarburos. So now, what is this? We have this expression, can a leopard change its spots, right? So it's actually a pasuk in Yirmiyah. We'll see, though, what the pasuk actually means. My chabarburosa. What does it mean, can a leopard change its chabarburos? What are chabarburos? If it's referring to leopard skin, which is the colored patches. Hi, v'namer chabarburosa. Why did it say a leopard is chabarburos? Nabmer givanim bele. It just say, can a leopard change its colors? What's this fancy expression that we don't really have so much knowledge on? Chabarburos. What does that word mean? We should just say, can a leopard change its colors? Rather, this pasuk is actually completely referring to this dark-skinned person, the kushi we mentioned before, which is kakushi. It means can a kushi change his skin? And the word namer, which we translate as leopard, now we're saying, no, it doesn't mean leopard, but it means can restore. The word means restore here. So the word namer can either refer to leopard or it could be the verb of restore. So it means, can a kushi change his skin? And can he restore its wounds? What does that mean? So, and the word chabarbura is we'll have to do with chaburo, which means a wound. Kakushi, the Torah is saying that a wound is like the skin of a kushi. Ma oire de kushi and a chazeres, just like the skin of a kushi is not reversible, right? Kushi cannot change the skin color. Chabur and a chazeres, so too a wound is only called a wound if it's irreversible, just like skin colors. Okay?
Rabbi, Michael Jackson changed his skin color.
What?
Michael Jackson changed his skin color.
How do you do it?
I don't know. He became white.
They say it was
almost.
They say it was a disease.
Yeah.
Numerous plastic surgeries.
It was a lot of plastic.
He had so many plastic surgeries that the skin of his nose eventually disappeared and only the cartilage was visible.
No, but he lightened his skin. He had his skin bleached.
All right.
He did something, but it was not normal.
Yeah. Okay. So now, ushar shekatzim v'chulu. Carrie, if you want, we're giving you homework. You could do a research on Michael Jackson for us and let us know.
All right.
Ushar shekatzim v'chulu. So then it says, other vermin, if you bruise them, you're exempt. Because again, they have a more thinner, fleshier skin instead of a real hide, and therefore bruising them would be considered reversible, therefore you're not liable, right? Pahargan chayiv. Implication for the Mishnah is if you bruise them, you're not liable. How about if you kill one of these other vermin? Definitely implies you are liable. Implies only for bruising you're not liable, but if you kill one of these vermin, even if it's not one of the 8 shratzim, you would be liable. Man Tana, who is a Tana that would say if you kill a vermin on Shabbos, you would be liable. And this would be relating to shochet, which is just like when you shecht an animal, which means you kill an animal. So killing even vermin would be liable. We're now on 107b3, halfway down Kuvzam Beis. Man Tana, who be the Tana? Rabbi Yirmiyah said, Rabbi Eliezer, this is Rabbi Eliezer, the Tana is to Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer says, Hahoire get kina b'Shabbos, kahoire gamel b'Shabbos. If somebody kills a louse on Shabbos, it's like he kills a camel on Shabbos, which means both of them are the same biblical prohibition of killing on Shabbos. Now we'll see other rabbis argue on Rabbi Eliezer, and they say you are not biblically liable for killing a louse on Shabbos. And we're assuming now louse means the category of animals that don't have bones or sinews, which would be like other vermin. So Rabbi Eliezer holds even killing a louse is biblically liable. The sages argue Rabbi Eliezer. So it sounds like our Mishnah that says if you kill vermin, you're liable, goes like Rabbi Eliezer. Mask if Rabbi Yosef challenges, hold on a second. Remember, our Mishnah holds that killing vermin on Shabbos, that's not just lice. All vermin implies it's biblically liable. We said that's only Rabbi Eliezer, but the sages are arguing Rabbi Eliezer by lice seemingly would also say other vermin are not biblically liable. Now we're going to challenge that. Maybe they specifically argue by lice, but other vermin, they would maybe hold you are liable. Rabbi Yosef challenges, maybe the rabbis only argue Rabbi Eliezer specifically by killing a louse. They say it's not biblically liable. Why? The Eina para varava, which because a louse does not reproduce. But other vermin and crawling things, the parn v'ravin, that they do reproduce just like other animals, like pligi, maybe they don't argue and they would agree that you are biblically liable. Now, so it comes out, could be the whole machlokas is specifically by lice that don't reproduce. Now, note 25 here. So what's the opposite? If they don't reproduce, they grow spontaneously from the person's skin. Now, note 25 here. Common lice do in fact reproduce through laying eggs, which are called nits, in a person's hair or skin. The explanation is possibly that the Gemara refers to a species of louse whose eggs are too small to be seen by the naked eye. Is a rule, anything that cannot be directly perceived by the human senses is halachically regarded as non-existent. The Torah was given not to angels, but to human beings to be understood and interpreted according to their natural limitations. Therefore, since it appears to people that these lice do not reproduce, the halacha treats them accordingly. Okay, Rabbi Leo Desser discusses this. So again, so comes out, it could be the whole machlokas is specifically by lice that don't reproduce, or at least to the visible eye they don't reproduce. But again, it could be all other vermin and animals. It could be everybody would agree that you would be liable. Now, what's the machlokas regarding whether you're liable for killing ilaus? The question is, what did they shacht and kill in the Mishkan? The rams. So that's the model for killing in the Mishkan. Rabbi Eliezer Savar Ke'elim. So Rabbi Eliezer holds that you only have the liability for killing if it's like rams. Ma'elim yesh b'hen netilas neshama. Just like killing a ram, what is the main thing about killing a ram? You're taking the life. Av kol sheyesh b'hen netilas neshama. So anything that you take its life, you're liable for, which would include lice as well. They have a life, so you'd be liable for killing them. Rabbanan Sarvakelim, the Rabbanan hold, no, it has to be more similar to the rams. Ma'ilim deparn v'ravin, just like rams reproduce. I've called depar v'rava. So it's your only liable things that reproduce, and therefore they would hold you're exempt by lice. Because to the visible human eye, certain species don't reproduce. So those at least you wouldn't be liable for killing. Amalei Abaye said to Rav Yosef, V'kina ein par v'rava. Is that true that a louse does not reproduce? V'amar mar, master said, which means Rav said, and which is in Avodah Zarah, says Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'zan. We see here the hashgacha pratis, the divine providence that Hashem has with every person and every animal and every aspect of this world. It says Hashem sits and sustains every member of the animal kingdom, and Rashi determines exactly how much food each species will have. Mikarne re'emim vad beitze kinam. From the horns of the re'emim, which is a very tall beast, Rashi says, with beautiful horns. Some say it's the reindeer. Now, the horns are the highest part of this large animal. So Hashem sustains all the way from the highest part of this animal, but Beit Zechinim all the way to the eggs of lice. From the largest to the tallest to smallest, Hashem is intimately involved in every single aspect of sustenance of every person, every animal, right? Now, if Hashem is getting involved in sustaining the lice, the eggs of lice, clearly the lice have eggs, which means they do reproduce, right? The Gemara says, no, minahu de mikre beit zechinam. When it says here to the eggs of lice, it doesn't mean the eggs of lice. Rather, it's actually the type of, there's a type of species called eggs of lice. That is actually the name of the lice called beit zechinam, eggs of lice. If so, it's not talking about to the eggs of lice, but it just means that Hashem sustains even this species called eggs of lice. I guess they're very teeny species. But we learned another brayso, Tufuye or beit zechinim, Tufuye and eggs of lice, which is the reproduction of certain creeping things. And it says in eggs of lice, again, it seems to imply that lice have eggs. Again, no, mino de mikra beit zechinim. Again, it could be just referring to a species called eggs of lice. Okay? So it comes out, it could be every creature other than a louse. You definitely are biblically liable for killing on Shabbos. The louse would be a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan, because since the visible eye, they don't reproduce, therefore the question is, are they too dissimilar to rams, and therefore not make you liable? Okay. How about the case of a flea? The paravarava, which does reproduce. Vitanya learned in Brayso, Hatzad Parish b'Shabbos. Somebody traps a flea on Shabbos. Now it has to be that it's not already trapped. So let's say it's from the ground or outside of his clothing. Rashi implies it could be if it's already trapped inside your clothing and you seize it. It could be that's not trapping because it could be trapped already. But if it's not already trapped, Rabbi Eliezer Mechai, Rabbi Eliezer says you're liable. Rabbi Shua Paiter, Rabbi Shua says that you're exempt, right? Now, we're assuming here that this trapping and killing halachas go hand in hand. As we generally found, bruising and trapping, we usually put the two together. So it sounds like Rabbi Shua would hold that you're not liable. If he holds you're not liable for trapping it, seemingly holds you're not liable for killing it either. So we just said that everybody agrees that unless it's a louse, everybody agrees you're liable for killing it. It seems like the flea would be machlokas to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua if you're liable. So Amar Vash said, no. Sida hariga karamis. How do you pose a contradiction from trapping to killing? What is the halachos of Eliezer and Rabbi Shua? Ela demar savar, except that Rabbi Eliezer holds davar she'ein b'minai nitzad chayiv. Remember, there's another question by trapping. If you're only liable for trapping a species, that some of its species are purposely trapped by professionals and people trap them. So that whole machlokas, why Rabbi Eliezer says you're liable and Shua says you're not, because Rabbi Eliezer holds davar she'ein b'minai nitzad chayiv. You're liable for trapping something, even if it's a species that's not normally trapped. For example, a flea is not a species that people generally trap. Rabbi Eliezer holds you're still liable for trapping, even if it's not a trappable species. Rabbi Shua holds that you're exempt if it's not a species that is generally trapped. But when it comes to killing, I feel Rabbi Shua would agree that you are liable for killing it. Okay? Now, again, just pointing out, you always have to keep in mind why you're doing it. Because again, you have to keep in mind, is this a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa or not? Which means that if you're doing it for some other purpose, if the reason why you're killing the flea is in order that it doesn't bother you, seemingly that would be malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, which means machlokes from Yehuda and Shimon. Yehuda holds you're liable, and Shimon says you're not liable for that. But if you're doing it for constructive purposes, whatever reason you want a dead flea, I don't know, I want this for making a medicine out of it. That was one of the reasons why people specifically would kill certain creatures for medicinal purposes. So that's where that would be a malach machshavas, a constructive malacha, which again you would have. So according to how we're coming out, killing a louse is machlokas, killing everything else, it could be everybody agrees is a biblical liability. Okay. We're now 107 before, we're around 2/3 of the way down, Kuf Zayin Amid Beis. Hatzadan, L'tzera Chai V'chulo, somebody who traps them. So these are not the 8 shratzim, the other shratzim. So if you trap them for a constructive purpose, you are liable. If it's without a constructive purpose, you're not going to be biblically liable. Mantana, who's a Tana? Rabbi Yehuda Rav. Rabbi Yehuda saying Rav. Rabbi Shimon. This is Rabbi Shimon. Our dear machlokas, we've had many times in Shabbos between Rabbi Yehuda and Shimon. So if you trap something, but not because you want it trapped, just you don't want it bothering you, that's called malacha she'eina tzricha legufam, a malacha done not for a defined purpose, not because you want it trapped. But you're trapping because you don't want, it's for a different purpose. Let's say you don't want it to bother you. But again, ask yourself the question, if I had a wand and would I want it to disappear? The wand question, if the answer is yes, I wish this would just disappear. So when you're trapping it, you're not trapping because you want it trapped. You're trapping because you just don't want it here. That is called a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. Rabbi Yehuda says you're liable, or Shimon says you're not. So our Mishnah says that you're only liable if you're doing because you want it trapped is going like whom? That's Rav Shimon's opinion. Okay. Ika demasni la. Some teach Rav's ruling regarding this Mishnah, which is a Mishnah in Idias. Hamefis mursa b'Shabbos. We just had this earlier today. If somebody lances a boil on Shabbos, im lasas lapah. If your goal when you lance it is to make a hole in it because you want more pus to drain out, you want it to keep it open, or you want it to heal by keeping it open. Chai, if you're liable. We said either that's bona, you're building because you built a hole into your skin. Or it's malachim padish, the final hammer blow, and you're going about fixing this pus, the pimple. Chai reliable. If your whole goal is not to make a hole, but it's just to get the pus out, putter, you're exempt. Montana, who's a Tana that would say that if you make this hole and your whole goal is just to get the pus out, but not because you want the hole. Montana, Rabbi Yehuda Rav, Yehuda Sending Rav. Again, this is just another version when Rabbi Yehuda Sending Rav this statement. Rav Shimon is strong to Rav Shimon. The Amar Malacha She'eina tzricha legufa, part of the Malacha She'eina tzricha legufa, you're exempt on it. So therefore, again, you always have to know why you're doing it. Because if my whole goal, I'm making a hole, is not because I want the hole. I just want to get the pus out. So therefore, that's a malach she'en tzricha gufa. That according to Shimon, it's only rabbinically forbidden, not biblical. And again, by cases of pain, the rabbis sometimes relax that. Ve'ika damasni laha, and some teach us regarding this statement, this Mishnah, which is actually a Mishnah in Idiasol. So hatzad nachash b'Shabbos. Somebody traps a snake on Shabbos. So this is also mentioned earlier today. If your goal is that it won't bite you, pater, you're exempt. If the reason why you're trapping is, let's say you want to use a venom for healing purposes, chayiv, you're liable. So again, it depends why you're trapping it. Montana, who would say that makes a difference. Amar Behuda Marav, he's in Rav Shimon. Again, it's only according to Shimon. So again, malacha she'en tzricha gufa, you're exempt on it. So therefore, if you're trapping the snake, just so it won't bother you, that's called malacha she'en tzricha gufa. That according to Shimon, it's only rabbinically forbidden. And again, by cases of pain, it could be something that they relax that. Okay, next case. If somebody takes a fish from the sea on Shabbos, did he do any malacha? Andy the fisherman, what do you say? You pull a fish out of the sea on Shabbos.
Well, yeah, that's kind of like if I'm the only reason I'm not saying absolutely it's a violation of malacha and you're liable for it because it seems like there's a difference if you take it out with your hand than if you take it out with a hook or trap it. I guess maybe it's all trapping. Yeah. Yes, it's a violation. It's all trapping. But
okay. What other malacha might be applicable if you pull a fish? What happens if you take a fish out of the sea?
You're taking him out of his realm and he'll die.
He'll die. What malacha is dying?
I don't think there is a killing, shechting kind of improper. Now, you can't shecht on Shabbos in any way, shape, or Yom Tov, you could do that.
But time out. You're going.
You don't shecht the fish, though. You don't shecht fishes.
Right.
Are you liable for killing it or not?
Yeah.
Which
but not on Yom Tov, right?
Forget about Yom Tov. We're not talking Yom Tov here.
Shabbos, yes, you are liable for killing.
Killing.
Shechting.
Even though you're not shechting.
What is the name of that malacha? It's not called killing.
Toke.
What does that mean? Toke means what?
Slaughtering. Slaughtering is just a standard example of how you would kill an animal. But the whole past half an hour we've been saying that it's not just shechting. Any form of killing, right? We said a louse is machlokas. Other than a louse, any type of killing animals would be liable for shochet, right? So if you pull a fish out of the sea, if you're killing it, that would be shochet, right? Now, once it dries to the point where it's gonna die, that could be already the malach of shochet, which we're gonna discuss now. So Amr Shmuel said, Hashela dag min hayam. Somebody takes a fish from the sea. Kivin shiyavish ba kasela. Once it dries on it, the spot the size of a sella was a certain coin. Once you have a dry spot on this fish, the size of a sella, it's going to die even if you throw it back in. Chayiv, so you're liable for shochet at that point because you just created the death process on it. Rabbi Yossi bar Rav, and Rabbi Yossi bar Rav, and said Uvein Sapirov, this is specifically a dry spot between the fins is irreversible. You know that it's going to die. Rav Ashi said, it doesn't have to be that it actually dried. Once it forms drops of slime, when you touch it, that's good as dead. The commentators all ask on this Gemara, what about Andy's other reason? Why is it that you're only liable once it starts forming slime? Seemingly, as soon as you pulled it out, you did which malacha? You did the malacha of trapping. So they say there's a way to pull it out without trapping it. Let's say you trapped it before Shabbos. So let's say it's swimming around in your bucket or it's in a net already. So it's already trapped before Shabbos. So you're avoiding the trapping issue, but you should just know as soon as you pull it out, there's a separate issue of killing it. Okay? There may be a muktzah issue as well. There is a muktzah issue as well. Okay. Amar Mar Bar Hamduri, Amar Shmuel. Somebody sticks his hand into the innards of an animal on Shabbos, and he dislocated the embryo that was inside of it. Chayiv, you're liable. Now, what malacha is this? So, Meiri says, even if the embryo didn't die, so there's no issue of killing, there's another issue of kotzer, of reaping, because reaping is you uproot something from its place of growth. So if you uproot the embryo from its place of growth, that's actually a malacha of kotzer, of harvesting. So even if you don't kill it, there's a separate issue. Others say, by the way, there's actually a big machlokas. If you did kill it, would there be a malacha of killing it or not? So there's question whether an embryo is considered like it has its independent life or not. So the
Rabbi, isn't harvesting specifically taking something out of the earth?
No, it's from its place of growth. Now you're thinking about, so we did say that if it's in, let's say, an unperforated flower pot, it could be you're not liable for kotzer. But that's because that's not the natural place of its growth, to be in a flower pot. But kotzer is you uproot something from its place of growth. So again, I'm going to tell you there's a major machlokus over here. Are we dealing with the issue of kotzer, or are we dealing with the issue of netilas neshama, taking a life? So that's different opinions over here.
If you cut your hair, is that kotzer?
What?
If you cut your hair, is that kotzer?
Well, I don't know, because the gozes issue anyways. Shearing is gozes. So you're asking, why do you need gozes? Anyways, all gozes should be kotzer. Interesting question. Sometimes we do have cases of malachas that are similar concepts that just apply different cases. So gozes is specifically like a growth type of issue. So again, it's a major machlokus over here. Some say kotzer applies because you took it from a dislodged from its place of growth. Others say that kotzer does not apply here because it only applies to plants, not animals. Some say killing it does apply over here until they killed it. Others say killing doesn't apply because an embryo doesn't have its own independent life. So again, a major machlokus are what is the malacha talking about? So again, so this is what Bar Hamduri said, name of Shmuel, you're liable for dislocating the embryo. My time, what's the reason why he's liable? Amar Rava said, Bar Hamduri Asberli. Bar Hamduri explained to me, Lav Amar Sheshas. Did Rav Sheshas say, Haiman de Talash Keshusa Mehizme Behige? Somebody who detaches hops, which grow on prickly shrubs, are not attached to the ground. They get their nourishment from the shrubs, not from the ground. So if somebody detaches hops from briars and brambles, he's liable for uprooting something from its place of growth, even though you did not detach it from the ground. You just detached it from the shrub. Here also, in the case of discarding an embryo, you would be liable for uprooting something from its place of growth. Again, there's a big machlokus about this. If it means literally it's a kotzer, or does kotzer only apply to plants, but it's rather netilas neshama, killing it. Big machlokus, what exactly malach is. Amar Abaye said, Hai man de talash pitra meuna de chatzpa. Somebody who detaches a fungus from the handle of a pitcher. Sometimes fungi grow at the rim of a vessel due to the moisture it collects. So you would be liable for uprooting something from its place of growth, even though it's not attached to the ground. Matzah Vaisha challenges Hatolish me atzis nakuv chayiv. The Mishnah says, and we have this in Daf Sadi Hey, somebody who uproots something from a flower pot that has a hole in it is liable because that's considered attached to the ground. This was Avram Ben Berel's question. If you pluck a plant from a flower pot that does not have a hole, you're exempt, right? The Gemara says, so why is this case? So we see if it's not from the ground, you're not liable. The Gemara says, no, it goes by its usual place of growth. That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Hasam lav hanu revise. There, in the case of plants growing in a pot without a hole, that's not the usual place of growth. The usual place of growth for plants is in the soil, in the ground. However, something that's plucked from a place that it usually grows, that you would be liable for. All right? All right, shkoyach. Let's just do a little Shabbos kitchen here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, by the way, Michael Jackson had a rare disease called vertigo. Vititigo. He started having little white spots on him, and it kept spreading and spreading.
Wow.
And it was because it was triggered by all the plastic surgery that he had, according to one thing that I read. I don't know.
Got it. All right, thank you. Okay. We are now up to a lot of practical applications for the halachas of page 37 here in the Shabbos kitchen. Lots of practical applications. Ready? Warming up a baby's bottle. So if a baby's bottle has milk in it, what do we know about milk? Is milk cooked or not cooked?
Cooked.
No.
Cooked. Pasteurized. Milk is pasteurized, which means it's cooked. So again, the first question we always have to ask ourselves is what you're heating up, was it cooked or not cooked? Because that makes a big difference. A baby's bottle containing a pasteurized liquid, like milk, may be immersed in a bowl or cup of hot water, which is a cliche. Okay, because again, we've seen, so if you heat up milk, right? So this is a question about a liquid that was cooked that cooled down, which we said was one of the 4 leniencies we had by a cliche. Cliche has the power to cook, but one of the leniencies was that a liquid that is cooked already, that got heated up, that got cooled down, you're not allowed to recook it. But in a cliche, you're allowed to recook it. So a baby's bottle that has a liquid in it that was cooked already, for example, milk that was pasteurized, you would be allowed to immerse it in a cliche. How about pouring onto it from a kli rishon, from a first vessel? You're allowed to take your thermos that was heated up, the water was heated up in this urn, and pour it on to the baby bottle. Are you allowed to do that or not?
Seems like you should be able to.
So, Eroi Kli Rishon, the pourings of a first vessel has the potential to cook still. But we also said it only cooks the outer layer. What's the outer layer of this baby bottle? The bottle. That means if you pour in it from a Kli Rishon, the only thing it's going to cook as a Kli Rishon is the bottle. But that which is inside the bottle, the pouring doesn't cook. What cooks it is going to be the rising water, which is a Klisheni status. Therefore, you would be allowed to do it. So again, a baby's bottle containing a pasteurized liquid, we're talking about specifically when what was in the bottle was cooked already, like a milk, may be immersed in a bowl or cup of hot water in a klisheni. You're allowed to stick it into a klisheni. It is also permissible to pour hot water from a kettle onto the bottle. However, the bottle may not be immersed in a kli rishon. A bottle that contains a non-pasteurized liquid may not be immersed in a kli sheni, but only in a kli shlishi. So again, if you have a baby bottle, so if what's in it is not cooked already, you can only put it into a kli shlishi, or you could pour in it from a kli sheni. If it's milk and it's pasteurized already, you cannot, so let's just say I have a hot water urn where the water is heated up in, okay? To stick the bottle into the urn is a no-no, because that's a kli rishon, right? To pour from the urn onto this baby bottle is okay, even though that's called Eroi Kli Rishon, the pourings of a Kli Rishon, which has the potential to cook, but we know that pourings only cook the outer layer. The outer layer here is the bottle. I don't care if the bottle gets cooked. The bottle's not a cookable item, and therefore what it's going to do is heat up the bottle from the Kli Sheni, and that's okay to heat up a liquid that was already cooked, but cool down, you're allowed to heat that up in a Kli Sheni. If the liquid inside the bottle was not cooked already, so then you can only put it in a kli shlishi or pour on it from a kli sheni. Let's do one more here. Adding noodles to hot soup. Are you allowed to put your noodles into hot soup? Okay, Friday night. Practical question. Cooked noodles may be added to hot soup that is still in the pot, provided the pot is first removed from the block, that it's not on a fire anymore. Why is this okay? So you're allowed to take cooked noodles. Now, I want to point out, you must know how the noodles were done. If they were baked, so you're not allowed to cook something that was baked in a kli rishon. But if the noodles were cooked, we have a rule of ein bishul acher bishul. Something that was cooked, you're allowed to cook it again, provided that it's a solid, not a liquid. You are allowed to add noodles to a kli rishon as long as it's not on a fire anymore. So if you have a pot of soup, you heat it up right before Shabbos, you turn off the fire before Shabbos, okay? It's a boiling hot soup. If you have noodles that you know are cooked, not baked, but you know they're cooked, you are allowed to put them into that boiling pot of soup, okay? All right, that's the beginning. We have a lot of practical applications coming on now. So we learned the concepts, and now we're going to go through a lot of cases, how to apply them in practice.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Yes.
At my Shabbos, at my lunch table yesterday, my wife and I had a long conversation about a cholent pot. I asked my wife, I said, do you use a ladle to scoop the cholent out of the cholent pot and put it in the bowl? She said, no, I use a spoon. And I had some question to whether the spoon would be considered a second vessel. And then she said, well, no, it would be a third vessel. I said, why? She said, because the cholent pot sits inside another pot-looking thing that actually was where the heat element is. And I said, I don't think that's considered a vessel. It is because they put that aluminum foil to separate it. I said, I don't know. And she said, well, what's the difference anyway? And I said, because if it's not, then I wouldn't be able to put uncooked spices like pepper in it. But so my first question is: a spoon the same as a ladle?
I don't see why. I don't see the difference between a spoon and a ladle.
Well, a ladle is kind of like a pot itself, but because a ladle is more like a pot or something, but it's bigger. Okay,
I'm not aware that they talk about the dimensions of the ladle. The spoon is your ladle here, as far as I know.
How about the question of if there's a pot inside a pot, like a crock pot?
So that's a good
Got
question.
a second vessel?
First, I'll give your wife credit for a good thinking head. That's a good question. But as far as I'm aware, the pot that it's heated up in is your kli rishon. So if you have, as far as I know, anything that was on the fire and that came in contact with the fire is your kli rishon. So over here, if you have a pot within a pot, but both are in contact with the fire, so then it's getting heated up in this pot, that is a kli rishon.
Okay.
Right? That meaning that it's cooked, right? It's heated up. You don't have, the point is, by kli sheni, the kli sheni never came in contact with a source of fire. Therefore, the walls of a kli sheni cool it off. But over here, you're talking about a pot that came in contact with the fire, right? It came in contact with the source of heat.
They both came, yeah.
Right. So I would say that is called a kli rishon.
And if it wasn't a spoon being the second vessel, what if you used like a spatula or something that didn't have sides to it?
I'm not aware that makes a difference. But 1 second though.
Why not?
Do you take I have another leniency here. When you take the cholent, you take it from the cholent pot, and then what do you do exactly? Do you put it into a serving pot and then on your plate, or you go straight from the pot?
No, it goes from the cooking pot. She takes it out and puts it off somewhere to the side, and then takes the top off or some kind of thing like that, and then scoops it out.
Onto your plate or onto a serving plate?
At lunchtime, usually into my plate.
Okay, so right, so that would be the question of a ladle if your plate is a kli sheni and kli shlishi. Because if you go from the serving thing from the pot to a serving pot and then to your plate, then if you're sure your plate is a kli shlishi. Right. I want to point out, by the way, when it comes to cholent, we'll see more about this. Cholent, you have to be aware, because the potatoes in the cholent may be called a solid, which doesn't always have the leniencies of a kli shlishi. Remember that also?
Yeah, right, yeah.
You have to keep that in mind.
Just the liquid.
The liquids and the solid parts of the cholent.
Now, it was interesting that the pepper, the whole discussion was over pepper. I looked it up in the dictionary and said peppercorns are dry. They're like cooked in the sun. So is pepper not considered an uncooked spice?
I'd have to look that up. Anybody know if pepper is called cooked? I'm not sure.
I mean, I know they're dried in the sun, but is that considered cooked?
I'm not. I would have to look up the each spice independently. We could look that up, whether it's called cooked or not.
Okay.
All right.
Rabbi Loeb,
yeah.
Last time we talked about this, it was a question of whether you dipped in many times or just a couple of times, that you heated up the utensil that was transferring the food or not.
If you dip it in many times, it definitely does not have the status of a kli sheni. If you only dipped it in once, not a lot of times, that's the machlokas Andy's talking about, which is not so simple either. Meaning, again, if you leave it in for extended times, or you keep on dipping in it, there is no question. The ladle does not become its own entity. And it's only relevant if you dipped it in occasionally. So there it's going to depend. That's a question whether it counts as a kli sheni or not. And depending on what you want to add, that's the ladle question, that case, which is for some things you could be lenient, some things we're not lenient. We'll see more about that as we go through the practical obligation. Yeah, Steve?
But isn't the critical step, which we all sort of assume, but if you're a neophyte, you may not realize, is that you take the crock pot out of the pot to stir from it. You can't, as far as I understand, the crock pot, when it's in the liner, you can't serve from there to your plate or to something else, because then you're really stirring it on the fire. You have to take the pot out and
Right.
put it down.
But that's still, you're right, 100% correct. You're not allowed to stir it on the fire, but that's still called a clear rishon when you take it out.
Yeah,
You took the whole insert out, right?
yeah.
That insert is a clear rishon. Because that insert came in contact with the source of heat. So when you take that insert and you put it on your counter, that is a clear rishon because it was heated up in there, right?
Yes.
That's still a clear rishon.
Okay. Okay, but you have to do that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll see. Yes, you are not allowed to stir or take food out from anything on the fire right now. Yes, correct.
Are we eventually going to get to the point where we talk about putting that pot back in the fire? Where you got to put your hand on the top or some kind of. I was like, I don't even do. I let my wife do that.
It's coming attractions. But we'll go through, by the way, your case of ladle. Again, what we did so far was we went through all the basic concepts. Now, practical applications, he's going to go through practically how they apply. So we'll get back to the ladle with practical applications coming up soon.
Okay.
Go for Abraham.
Ellie,
Yeah.
where did we get up to?
We turned
Amal.
Rav Ches Amid Aleph. It's by the 2 dots over there. 4 lines.
Amravuna?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, Andy, go for it.
Last time we talked about the penalties for refusing to give charity. Now he goes into why people are scared to lend money. As an introduction, he says there are 5 main reasons why people fail to fulfill the mitzvah of giving interest-free loans: fear, ignorance, excuses, stinginess, and laziness. The answer to each of these reasons will be addressed individually in the coming chapters. Perhaps these answers will help us to overcome our own failure to lend money. In this chapter, we address the issue of fear. Number 1, perhaps the borrower will not repay the loan. Some people are scared to lend money for fear that the borrower will not repay the loan. They should consider the following points. If the request is for a small loan, which one is obligated to give due to the mitzvah of tzedakah and supporting the poor, one must lend the money even if there is a real concern that it will not be repaid. B, even if the above mitzvahs do not apply, if the borrower is willing to give a security as collateral, one must lend him the money. C, if the lender does not want to take security, he should consider what his response would be if the same person asked to purchase merchandise on credit, from which he would make a profit. If he would take a risk for his own profit, he must also take a risk for the sake of the mitzvah. If there is only a small chance, or even a 50-50 chance, that the borrower will fail to repay the loan, one should not rush to refuse the loan without careful consideration.
All right, Shkach. Who here is wanted already to resume in person tomorrow?
Me.